What's going on? It's a these people.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to this first meeting of the Environment and Performance Committee in this new municipal year. My name is Councillor Claire Rylott, and I'm the chairman of this committee. And my vice chairman is Councillor Lena Savickiana. Before we move to the agenda this evening, I'd like to remind committee that this meeting is being streamed live. And now our housekeeping rules are as follows. Restroom facilities are available on this floor for the ladies and down the main stairwell for the gentlemen. In the event of the fire alarm sounding, officers will escort all attendees to the nearest safety point. May I please ask that all persons addressing this meeting do so clearly and directly into the microphone systems at all times. This is to ensure a clear quality of sound for anyone viewing the live stream. Please be advised that abuse or intimidation of any kind will not be tolerated. Anyone who is deemed to breach this requirement will be warned and asked to refrain, and if the behaviour persists, they will be asked to leave the meeting. That concludes the housekeeping rules, and we will now move straight into part one of this evening's agenda and address the preliminary items. Item 1, to receive apologies for absence and notification of any substitute members.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. We have one apology this evening from Councillor Alice Thompson. No substitute member. Thank you.
Item 2B, part 1, to sign the minutes of the last meeting held on the 31st of March. As we do not have a quorum of members from that meeting in attendance at this meeting to agree the minutes, I will sign the minutes as seen. Item C, to receive declarations of interest in respect of any item on the agenda. Does any member of this committee wish to declare any interest in any item on the agenda? Thank you. That concludes the preliminary items. Oh, apologies.
Just to confirm, Madam Chairman, there are no questions this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. That does conclude the preliminary items. We will now move into part 2 of tonight's very busy agenda, and as members will see, we have a significant amount of reports to consider for the first meeting of this new committee. Our first report this evening is the proposed joint scrutiny activity for 23-24 for the South and East Lincolnshire Councillors Partnership, which is on page 9 of the agenda. This report is being presented by the portfolio holder, Councillor Anne Dorian, with the report author Rebecca James in attendance virtually to support the report. Okay.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. So this, thankfully, this first agenda item is very straightforward, and it's really for your committee, Madam Chair, to identify, in addition to yourself and Councillor Savickiana, who would like to sit on the joint scrutiny of the partnership. At Appendix A and B, you'll find the relevant detail of the topics that are going to be scrutinised, and as your report says, the only change is that the transport study is not going to take place. So I think the first one is the health scrutiny, or health and wellbeing. So you might have somebody in your committee who's got a particular interest in that area, Madam Chair. So that's quite a straightforward report, really. You just need a nomination, I think, and for you to consider those topics, and if you wanted to add anything else.
Thank you, Councillor Dorian. Do we have anybody that is interested in putting their names forward to do this role? Total, put that on.
Yes. I'll go forward.
Thank you, Councillor Pierpoint. Thank you very much. Are there any comments? Sorry, are there any comments? Adding a report?
Maybe behind.
Hello, Rebecca, yes.
Hello, sorry, I wasn't sure whether to put a hand up or yeah, just to note that we're hoping to find 3 members from each council, so 3 members from Boston. So if there are no further members on this scrutiny committee that are interested, we'd need to follow procedures at your council to find another 2 members that would be interested in joining, because we're having sort of 3 members from South Holland, 3 members from East Lindsey, and then 3 members from Boston. So we've got equal representation. So I know we've got 1 councillor interested. So I think the procedure, I've spoken with Karen before, is to email around other scrutiny members on your other scrutiny panel first to see if there are any further members.
Yeah, Rebecca, Rebecca, whilst Councillor Pierpoint's put his name forward, you've also got Councillor Riley and Councillor Savicki, and tonight it's 3, isn't it? Have I got this over my computer?
No, that's the next item. That's the annual scrutiny of the that's the, I know it's having 2 sort of right next to each other, so that's the annual scrutiny of the partnership where the chair and the vice chair automatically get a place, and then we ask 1 other member. This is to ask for 3 members to look at the healthy living action plan, which comes off the back of the health and wellbeing strategy for Lincolnshire. This report's looking for that.
Thank you.
I'll be the second one.
Councillor Danny. Thank you. Councillor Marson.
I'll be the third.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any further questions on this, please?
Can you just clarify my position again in which I'm going on? So I'm getting a bit confused here, if you don't mind, Chairman. What have I volunteered to do?
Yeah, Rebecca, would you like to answer that, please?
Yeah, of course. This one, I mean, you can change if you like. This one is for the healthy living action plan, which comes from off the back of the health and wellbeing strategy. So it's to feed into an action plan for that.
I'm happy with that, thank you.
Yep, you're okay to stay on. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So we've now got three people to do the jobs. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you.
Any further questions?
Madam Chair, just my apologies. It made me confuse the whole committee and myself. I apologise.
Okay, so moving on to item 2, our second report this evening, annual joint scrutiny task group for the South and East Lincolnshire Councils Partnership. You will find this on page 19. The report again is being presented by portfolio holder Councillor Anne Dorian, with reports called for Rebecca James in attendance virtually to support the report.
Thank you, Chair. So yeah, everything I've said before, again. So this one, I think I just read it wrong. So this is where you want 1 other member in addition to yourself and your vice chair. And the memorandum of agreement between the partnership councils enable joint scrutiny to take place of what's going on in the partnership. And the most important thing, I think, for us to look at, Madam Chairman, is that we are making progress to make those combined savings of 42 million that were promised right at the beginning. However, there are other things to look at. But so yes, you just need 1 other member in addition to your 2 good selves. And Rebecca's nodding, so hopefully I've got that one right. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dorian. I already have 1 hand up.
Happy to do that as well.
You are, thank you.
We've got scrutiny here.
Was there anybody else wanting to do this role? No, thank you, Councillor Pierpoint. The job is yours.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Do we have any further questions on this item? Oh, hello. Sorry, I've completely seen you, Rebecca.
No, that's all right. Sorry, I've just realised that I made an error on the previous item, which I do apologise about. It's my fault completely because I've got 2 things open because I'm about to join the South Holland scrutiny. I was actually asking for members for an environmental crime enforcement contract scrutiny, because your other scrutiny committee, the Corporate Community Committee, have already chosen members for the other one. So I do apologise for that. I've got the wrong item open. So
thank you, Rebecca.
so
we're
just to clarify that if the
item,
members, yeah,
environmental crime, not health.
yeah,
Thank
sorry
you.
about that. Do you want me to explain what that is instead?
Thank you. Yes.
Yeah, so the environmental crime enforcement contract was the first sort of the first big contract that the three councils did together, and it's not particularly looking at environmental crime as such. It's looking at how we procured the contract and how well it's working, and to monitor its effectiveness, and if it's what worked well in having a contract as a partnership, or do we need to do things separately. So it's kind of a monitoring and a review of the first year of a big contract. So if any members wanted to change their mind, now they know it's a different topic, I do apologise, but I just wanted to be clear before we moved on.
Thank you, Rebecca. The three names put forward originally, would you like to continue and go on to that scrutiny panel instead?
Yes, we'll carry on.
Sorry, Chair. Is this a completely different subject? Can other members ask to be part of this, or have we had our chance and that's gone now?
If you wish to be considered, Councillor Pryke, I don't see that there's a problem.
I had wanted to put my name forward for environmental crime scrutiny, not for health.
Yeah, it is in the papers. It's my fault for talking about the wrong one. It is the one that's in your agenda pack. So apologies again.
Councillor Pryke has said he'd be interested, and also Councillor
Chair, I'm happy to drop off that committee.
yeah. Thank you. So at the moment, the proposals I have are Councillor Pryke, Councillor Danny, and Councillor Lena. Everybody happy with that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Our third and final report tonight is the annual crime and disorder report on page 25 of the agenda. This report will be presented by the portfolio holder, Councillor Anne Dorian, supported by Andrew Hall, our CCTV manager, Jonathan Challen, our Safe Communities Service manager, who is attending in place of the report author, Community Safety manager, Zoe Walters, who is the Community Safety Strategy Coordinator at Lincolnshire County Council, who is joining us virtually. And last but by no means least, Inspector Colin Clarkson of Lincolnshire Police. Welcome. Welcome to you all. I would just like to advise the new members on this committee that whilst Inspector Clarkson is in attendance this evening, he is here only to answer questions in respect of the report that is in front of us. Inspector Clarkson is scheduled to attend a meeting of BTAC in due course, which he does annually. With the permission of the chairman of BTAC, all members are invited to attend that meeting, allowing them the opportunity to ask questions of Inspector Clarkson in respect of the role of the police in Boston. So who would like to go first on the report?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'm sure you've all read your papers. So we're going to talk now for the next few minutes about community safety and about how we discharge our duties as a local authority. So the report's actually just recommending that you note the report, that you can consider specific areas that you may wish to interrogate further and bring back to a future scrutiny committee for more detailed consideration. So I just want to explain to you really in simple terms that we have a partnership community safety board, what's called the South and East Lincolnshire Community Safety Partnership. And then sitting above that at a strategic level is the Safer Lincolnshire Partnership. And that's clerked and administered by Lincolnshire County Council. And we pay a small sum into that We used to apparently pay quite a lot of money to administer this sort of thing, but then the Police and Crime Commissioner came along and he discharges it through his precept. So we do a lot at an operational level, and you've got your report here on antisocial behaviour and CCTV in particular. The officers present tonight can speak to you in a lot more technical detail and interrogate the data if that's what you wish to do. So on page 26 there at 1.3, you have a list of the statutory duties that the Community Safety Partnership undertakes. And then, as I said, the report covers antisocial behaviour, the public space protection order and the CCTV. And I'm sure you'll have a lot of questions around that. Now, on page 27, under 2.4, the report annotates that we have an action plan that we draw up every year. Well, it covers 3 years actually. And I just wanted to point out that it says in 2.4 there's a draft plan attached, and that's not quite the case. There's no draft plan. I'm sure you found that when you read the report. That's not been included at this moment in time. So the appendices, Madam Chair, appendices are out of kilter somewhat. So we'll look at 2.6 on our antisocial behaviour. There was an antisocial behaviour awareness week. I'm told the team decided to take a very low-key approach to that. There was no real national campaign that we could piggyback from, and that was earlier on this month. That's something we can look at going forward, though, if members of the committee feel that it's something they would like to see. We also have, still on page 27, the last bullet point, the community trigger relaunch, and that's where a victim can ask for a case review if they have they're a persistent victim of antisocial behaviour. There's recently been one which Inspector Harpson attended, but it was here in this building, yeah, and that was chaired, I think, by a Chief Inspector. So there is a good sustainable process in place for victims of antisocial behaviour. I was interested to read about I'm on page 28 now, folk, the noxious odour pilot. I don't know if any of you have ever smelt cannabis. I'm a cannabis virgin, I don't mind admitting it. And it's only recently I have discovered the noxious fumes that cannabis that pour out. I actually discovered them in Boston Police Station when I went to visit Inspector Clarkson. I think the storeroom's next door to where they collect it, but it's really, really unpleasant. And so I can understand why perhaps local residents who have next door neighbours who are suffering from this kind of antisocial behaviour would want a route to find a remedy to that. So this is a very new approach that we are undertaking a pilot on behalf of the entire county. And I know the partnership, the Lincolnshire Safety Partnership, will be looking to roll that out if it's successful. So far, 4 advice letters have been sent out to people who have caused a nuisance in this regard, and so far that 5-step plan hasn't needed to be triggered any further than the initial advice letter. So that's a good thing. Moving on, still on page 28 under 2.7, you'll see that we had a hate crime awareness week last year, and there's another one scheduled this year for the week of the 14th of October, Madam Chair. And I've asked the officers to make sure that comms are involved in devising any comms plan to help them raise awareness with our public and our residents, so that they can report hate crime if it happens to them. There's other stuff there that I picked out stuff that I'm really interested in. So on page 29 under 2.9, obviously I'm really interested in the safety of women and girls. We had a white ribbon day last year where all councillors were sent a white ribbon and invited to wear them. And the same will be done this year, Madam Chair. That will be on the 25th of November. And that's obviously a campaign to end violence against women and girls. There's a really interesting, if you are interested in that topic, there's an interesting Instagram account called Catcalls of London, and that details in quite horrific colour the kind of abuse that women and girls suffer just going about the business, walking to school or college or shopping, and the kind of abuse they get from mostly men on the street. Still on 2.9, the second bullet point, the Safer Streets Round 4, obviously the infrastructure work is still being undertaken, Madam Chair. The CCTV cameras will be hopefully operational by the end of the year, and I think we got an extra 400. Is that right, John? Across the partnership, yeah. And Andy's here to speak in detail about CCTV, should you wish. I was really keen to read about the community CCTV volunteer. I think we might have two. Andy will give you more detail on that. But I think having a volunteer in that role, who was already quite well trained in the use of CCTV, I think is a great addition to our authority, Madam Chair, and can do tasks that won't detract from our paid staff, but will in fact enhance their working day and assist the police in their role as well. We also funded self-defence classes for young women and girls and women in general at Jeff Moulder. When I was in the role of mayor, I went along to take part in that class, and that was really quite enjoyable. That's still running. I was interested to read under 2.10, this dementia bands pilot. I think that's hugely interesting, and I couldn't quite get hold of a band to show you all. I will try and get one for the next meeting. But obviously, we've all heard stories, I'm sure, Madam Chair, of vulnerable people, you know, walking out the front door in the night, wandering off down the street at 2 o'clock in the morning. And if they're wearing one of these bands, it would obviously have all their details of next of kin, how to be contacted, and that's a cheap and efficient way of helping that vulnerable part of our community. I've highlighted loads, Madam Chair. I could talk for hours about this. I'm conscious I don't want to bore your committee to tears. I've picked out things that I'm interested in. So I think I'll leave it there. If you want to ask specific questions, that's why we've got Jonathan Challen here and Andrew Hall. But I think it's a really good report. It's form noting. We're clearly having an impact on community safety in a very positive way. And I think that's a good thing. I think we discharge our duties very well. I'm not saying I'm not going to come back to some committee at some point in the future and ask for another antisocial behaviour officer, because I do think that would benefit this council enormously. And that's the value of the work, the importance of the work that these people do. I think it's of immense value. I think the partnership working that they do with Lincolnshire Police, with housing associations, with Lincolnshire County Councils and the other districts is hugely valuable, and our residents benefit enormously from that. So I'll leave it there. Like I say, I could talk all night long about what I'm interested in, but it's really about what you're interested in that's important. So thank you for your indulgence, Madam Chair. I'll leave it there.
Thank you, Councillor Dorian. Zoe, I don't know whether you wanted to come in at this stage, or have you got anything to add to that?
Not hugely. I mean, I know that the papers will be taken as read. What I would like to do is give assurance that in terms of representation at the Safer Lincolnshire Partnership Strategic Board and the underpinning core priority groups, we do have really good representation from the South and East Community Safety Partnership as well, and that is absolutely invaluable in terms of progressing our work streams. I can see the clear links between our strategic county-wide plan that is referenced in Appendix E, the report, the annual report attached, and how that work aligns at your local level. So that is really, really reassuring. Lots of work ongoing, but I don't really want to repeat what's in the report, but I am happy to take any questions as they arise relating to the content that I've given you.
Thank you, Zoe. Just one thing that I picked up on this report, as Councillor Dorian said, there's lots of interesting things in here. It was Operation California, and I think we do have an update on that since this report was written. John?
Is there anything specific about Operation California?
Sorry, I thought that you'd moved on because we didn't have an itemiser machine, but I thought there was more to report on that. Thank you.
So yeah, in terms of the itemiser, yeah, well, those members are not aware, we've been operating across the county with 2 itemisers for a number of years now, and unfortunately those 2 itemisers are very old bits of kit, which even now the spares are getting very difficult to obtain. So we've got a piece of work underway through the Safety Partnership Core Priority Group and through the Serious Violence Group, if that's correct, Zoe. To put a paper together to put a bid forward to replace those itemisers. We're also working with the police as well. I think police have a piece of work to try and procure 2 themselves. We're not quite sure exactly where they are in the world, should we say, because these things come from America. But we'll be capturing all of that in terms of putting the bid forward. So that we've got the equipment that we need to carry out that work. In terms of Operation California, we use the itemisers as part of that as a right of entry into licensed premises, so that people entering the premises are swabbed prior to entering, and anyone found with any powdered residue on them obviously apprehended and interviewed, depending on the levels and quantity of the residue that's found. It's a really important piece of work, obviously part of the operation, and also to make sure that we don't start creating issues for licence holders or queues that can get quite aggressive quite quickly. We also operate with 2 machines, but moving forward, we always have more than that. It'd be really useful to have 3 there. So really important, but at the minute, limited with what we can support with in terms of California with the itemiser, while we're down to 1. So a bit of a watch this space, but hopefully by the time we meet next time, we'll have more data on that to report back.
Thank you very much for that information. So I will ask questions from the floor or comments. Councillor Danny.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I haven't got probably any questions for Inspector Clarkson, rather than probably thank you and thank your team, because from an experience which is I had a couple of months ago, I was really surprised at the amount of time it took the officers to get to the place, because there was some antisocial behaviour happening in the town centre. So it took them probably 2-3 minutes they were there. And then I was assured that they were watching them on the CCTV, which is again was another thing. And I tell you, I was very pleased to hear that. And I was very pleased to see that. And also, I'm very pleased to announce to you that a lot of people are much more happier in town now, because they see more frequent police cars in the town. They see more police walking early in the morning. They see the PCOs as well driving and walking. So that's give us a little bit of assurance that things are working the right way. There is one thing I would like to share with my fellow councillors here, is that we had a similar thing on the public protection at Lincoln, and I found out that there is, because if we go to page 30 and we go to point 3.2, which is says people are provided with support, there is a community, I think, help, which is they call it community trigger. And we didn't know about it, and neither of the councillors at the panel and the committee of public protection knew about it. So what I did, I asked Lisa to contact our borough council or the leader and have for us probably a presentation, because it would be very interesting for us to know to whom to talk to and how we can approach the public as well, and give them the phone number and the website of the place if they are not happy or they are not supported. So all in all I can say, thank you, Inspector Clarkson, for the presence of the police in the town. and I think we're heading the right way, and hopefully Boston will be much more safer than what people say, and we hope for a better future for our residents. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Valley.
I'll just come back to that. Councillor Day, thank you for your comments. Over the last year, I've not into a huge amount of detail and looking forward to our plans, but we have changed how we operate in Boston a little bit, and we'll be changing quite significantly going forward as well. So hopefully that's the start of good things that come to Boston. So thank you for your comments. In relation to the tree hedge, very quickly, I'm one of the independent chairs, so Chief Inspector Vauxhall, who chaired the one for Boston. So there is a process in place, and I think John mentioned it as well. If you're not happy with how something's been dealt with, it's not about apportioning blame, but it's about trying to find a solution. So the whole point of the trigger is a fresh set of eyes that are independent from any sort of case management. So again, that process is something that we use. It's not just police that chair those meetings. It's other agencies such as council managers, etc. Thank you. So, thank you.
Councillor Pierpoint, I think you've got something to.
Thank you, Chair. I'll do to Inspector Clarkson. Looking at the various campaigns that you've run in the document here, could I ask, are there details available of the monitoring and the analysis of actually how each campaign impacted on the community? What was the effects of that campaign? And do you have any information showing us how well that campaign worked? I mean, there's nothing in here, and actually, I'm conscious of the fact that if you're doing these campaigns, can we see some details of what actually happened and how it impacted? And let's see the progress of that campaign, because I think we're all keen to see that all these things that you're doing has a great impact on the community. And obviously, the more positive it is, the outcomes are better, the more happy we're going to be. So, have you got any information on that, please?
I don't. Most of the campaigns that you talk about are force campaigns that manage at strategic level. So we tend to be involved from a tactical point of view. So actually going to be on that. It's something that can take away, and you can look at that from a publicity point of view, the feedback point of view, because it's something that we should be doing. We should be feeding back the effectiveness of campaigns. So we started, I won't get into one detail, but we've started Operation Plotting for Boston. But part of that will be an assessment of the effectiveness and feedback to the community as well. So I can't talk about specific ones because I don't have that information. It's not I can take away.
If I can just come back on that point, I think it's important for councillors around this table and all the councillors in here, that if we've got information like that, we can, when we're talking to residents about issues and they say this didn't work or that doesn't work, or I saw that campaign, and we've got some ammunition and some information, we can use that to our advantage and say, well, actually it is working, because the statistics we've got back from the police and the community safety people is that that happened, that impacted there, and these are the sort of results. And I think that to me, that data and that analysis and that information is crucial.
Yeah.
It's crucial to us here in an area, if obviously people keep thinking that Boston is full of crime and problems and issues. I think that's very important for us to have some ammunition and some information that will help us to help you to put the information across into the public. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Pierpoint. Councillor Doreen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to address that point you raised, Councillor Pierpoint. To be fair on Inspector Clarkson, he is a scientist, he is a man of data, he loves data, like you wouldn't believe. So if he's got it, I know he will share it. Some of the campaigns that I mentioned, Councillor Pierpoint, were national campaigns that this council just kind of piggybacked on. And so if I say, for example, the Antisocial Behaviour Awareness Week, what my officers are telling me is that our local residents are actually very good at reporting antisocial behaviour. They know how to report antisocial behaviour, so there wasn't such an issue for our council to be worried about. And there's a fine balancing act between raising fear and alarm in local residents and making people think there's a problem out there when there isn't. And so that's one reason why it was so low key. And I guess when you measure these campaigns, well, I wouldn't like to be in your shoes, Inspector, because it must be very difficult. It's like how do you measure when something hasn't happened or when somebody suddenly feels better? You know, we all fill in, well, I hope we all fill in the Police and Crime Commissioner's annual survey when we say what our fear of crime is, you know, because I know Inspector Clarkson will talk for hours about how the fear of crime is disproportionately higher than the chances of anyone in Boston ever being a victim of crime. So it's a very difficult thing to measure, but I do know that he will provide data this quarter. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Pryke.
Thank you, Chair. This is a bit of a follow-up to Councillor Pierpoint's request for feedback on the campaigns. Many of the members of the public in Boston get much of their information about what the police are getting up to and how they're responding to individual complaints about, say, antisocial behaviour or whatever, from the neighbourhood policing team websites. And for the last few months, certainly the one that's called Outer or South Boston area, the one that covers Riverton, Swineshead, Curtin, Frampton, High Village Ward, has tended to say we are concentrating on traffic crime or roads and policing, not antisocial behaviour or burglary or whatever else that people have raised their concerns with councillors about. When there are reports back on these campaigns, maybe as part something from Lincoln, I don't know, from headquarters, could there be references on the NPT website to say the last 3 months we've been doing traffic problems or concentrating on traffic problems, and the results can be found at this link to wherever, or we've had great success on the A16, or we're doing wonderful things on the A17, so that people know what you're actually doing in those campaigns, because at the moment they don't.
So we're undergoing some change at the moment. There's a new model that's being introduced. As part of that is around that reporting back to the community, because it's not always done as well as it should be, like really from the example that you've given. So our comms department will pick those up, and they'll be putting that information out on behalf of the main policing team. We've been asking the team to speak to us so that we get that information that's right and accurate and relevant at that point in time. But hopefully we should start to see that consistency where the reporting is more accurate. Where we probably need more influence from communities around the priorities for each of those areas. Because at the moment, again, it's relatively inconsistent, albeit there is the strategy plan around obtaining priorities, whether it's a public meeting or engagements, school fair or coffee wineries, etc. So we're just undergoing a bit of change around that, and we've got a yearly calendar where we'll be coming out at set points in the year, quarterly, to establish what those priorities are, and it'll be consistent throughout the force, because what we found recently is that each area is very different. So the 5 weeks that I got in Boston, each of those areas obtain that information in a different way. So there is some consistency around that, so we'll understand what the priorities are from the community, what the priorities are from partners, and then the reporting back on that to our comms department. Thanks.
Councillor Gilbert.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Yeah. I'm just my eye has fallen upon pride of place in the report, and pride of place is an interesting kind of concept, isn't it? Because it can be affected by so many things that actually probably fall slightly below the threshold with a lot of the things that are contained within this report. In particular, I'm thinking about the new paving down Dorothy Lane, which is not actually complete at the moment, but is currently pockmarked with pieces of chewing gum, which is having a sort of an adverse impact on the appearance of that area of Boston. Allied to that issue, I guess, is littering and things of that sort. Antisocial behaviour, does it cover the broad span of those issues in addition to the more serious things that we talk about? And if it doesn't, is there any merit in including that sort of thing in a report of this kind to give a clearer focus on the issues that actually do affect people's pride in their environment?
So when it comes to this, that's something that we don't manage. That's managed by our enforcement teams here. So we have no vary on that. We work very closely with the enforcement teams, and that's a relatively recent thing that we've started to undertake. Antisocial behaviour, the definition of antisocial behaviour is behaviour that causes harm, distress or harassment. If it's in relation to a residential property, then it's simply an annoyance or a nuisance. But it can be in the community as well. So, you know, it could be within the ambit of antisocial behaviour. The pride in place, and I spoke to Councillor Dobbin, I think it was yesterday, around this, and this is something that we're looking at, you know, going forward. That's about what we've done over the last year, if you like, but this is something we're looking at going forward, because actually we know that ASB and crime and both linked, and we've mapped crime and ASB for the whole of the Borough. Where you get ASB, you get crime, and you get harm as well. But we know that the environment plays a big role in that, as do partner agencies. So it's really critical that we've got a plan, you know, around that, because this is the police, and I'm not trying to push this away from us, but we deal with the symptoms, so we deal with the ASB and the crime when it occurs. Actually, we need to be upstream of that and dealing with the things that cause that, whether it's mental health, issues, or the environment. And we know that the environment plays a critical part in antisocial behaviour and crime. So we've got a plan. We've, you know, speaking to various officers within the council. We've got some quite exciting ideas. You know, there's a partnership that we're hopefully going to undertake. So there is a plan ultimately.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it's not the police responsibility. It falls more down to the borough's antisocial behaviour officers to deal with those issues. But it's heartening to hear they are being dealt with.
Sorry.
It is a partnership approach, and I think we've really fairly got that partnership approach, particularly with the council and the police at the moment. So even the environmental stuff, you know, that's nothing to do with police in the you know, what you see, but actually we're critical in that aspect as well. So we're working with each other.
Yeah, that probably doesn't necessarily answer your question very easily. And again, I'm very disappointed to hear what is going on down Dolphin Lane when all that money is being spent. And I think we need to deal with that somehow. It does belong to LCC, but we don't want this to happen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just to answer Councillor Gilbert's point, yeah, everything, I endorse everything Inspector Clarkson said. Which demoted you to council. And we do have some really interesting and exciting ideas moving forward with our partnership approach, which is to bring your committee back, Madam Chair. This is really a backward-looking report. I'm aware that Andrew Hawes here and Zoe's here. So you've got the annual report from CCTV, you've got the annual report from the Safer Lincolnshire Partnership. It's really backward looking. So if you want to ask, I'm happy to take your comments, of course I am. But if you want to ask those officers specific questions and then identify perhaps areas, Madam Chair, that you would like to investigate further or to have more detail on the report.
Councillor Pierpoint.
I'm going to come back to the national awareness campaigns and all these other things. And Councillor Doran mentioned about piggybacking onto these campaigns. Clearly, if you're piggybacking onto campaigns, you must be doing some monitoring. But also, are there any local campaigns that you're going to be doing in Boston, just specifically for Boston? And if so, do we get to find out what they are? Because I believe, again, if we are aware of those campaigns coming along in the next 12 months, whether it's drink driving or whatever we can do, you know, it'd be useful for us to know, because we can then, you know, be aware. And then I'm certainly asking the question again about some analysis and monitoring, because I'm very keen to know how these campaigns work and how you monitor them and what comes out the back end of it. Because I'm very, very keen to see that we get some progress out of this. Otherwise, why are we doing them? You know what I mean? We're doing it for a purpose, I understand that, but I have to see some numbers at the back end of all these things that says that it's a successful campaign. Okay, thank you.
So in relation to Green Drive, as an example, that tends to be a force-wide campaign. Yeah. It is monitored. You may not get statistics just for Boston. It may be a Lincolnshire statistic that you see back, and that tends to be on the Christmas time around typically. In relation to Boston, I'm not going to talk too much about it. I think I'm about to be tapping over where I'm going to probably a comprehensive update in relation to that. But we have commenced Operation Potting. We had a partnership day back in May where we got about 40 or so different agencies together to discuss Boston and the issues. We're linked with the University of Lincoln on that. That operation is about dealing with street-based violence in Boston. And what I will say, this is the statistics, and I'm not saying that, you know, we've got all the data here, but when we look at the PCC's annual crime survey, Boston comes out as the highest for fear of crime in the whole of Lincolnshire. Lincoln is second from the bottom. If you look at the crime stats, and I think look before I came this evening, Boston sits at average for crime, for all crime. In fact, it was at the lower end of the average, it's now in the middle of the average, but we're at the average range for the whole of the Borough of Boston for all crime. If you look at public order, and even the most recent data, we are well under average for public order. I'm not saying that there aren't issues in Boston. Operation Boston will address those, but there are some perception issues around it. There may be under-reporting, you know, which we will look at, but we tend to sit at average. What we've done with Operation Plotting, we've mapped the whole of the Borough of Boston for all ASB, all street-based violence, and we're going to address that. And that's what I'm talking about, the pride in place, talking about specific offenders, etc. So there is a plan going forward, and that is a local one. That is something that I've generated just for Boston, and we'll be able to feedback an awful lot in relation to that. So hopefully that beats up, I'll be able to go into a lot more detail about that and the methods that we've used.
Just let me come back. I mean, I've obviously got a lot of elderly residents in my ward, and they are obviously concerned about the crime and the problems and the issues, and they won't want to go out after 4 o'clock in the afternoon because of, you know, they're frightened and scared. I'm on your side. I mean, I want to be able to go and talk to people and say, look, this is being dealt with, that's being actioned, there's a campaign coming up soon about this. Here's some statistics that says that Boston is actually not as bad as you think it is. All I'm trying to do is I'm trying to work with you and I'm trying to help you do your job by giving the information to the people out there who are concerned and talk to me about, you know, being frightened, don't like being out on their own. Boston isn't a safe place. I don't like to hear that. And I think, you know, we've got to get this negativity turned into positivity. And by the information, the campaigns that you're going to be proposing to do, all those things to me are going to be good ammunition for us to use in our communities. Simple as that.
I think Councillor Pierpoint has rightly said it seems to be ageing population. Are population older than Lincoln, or you know, why are the ageing population of Boston so concerned?
I don't know. To be fair, so what we've done, and we're waiting for the ones to come back in. I designed a survey for the community of Boston, so that went out digitally. I had PTSOs with 4 tablets out in the hotspot. So we've identified 4 hotspots, but I don't want to go into detail about them now because I've not got the literature, I've not got the presentation, the unfair to try and paint a picture of those like that. But we've got 4 hotspots that we've identified that we're working around. But in doing so we hold a huge amount of data in relation to crime and ASB, as do some of the partners. So we've got all of that, we've looked at that. But the part that we're really missing was the community views around those hotspots, around crime in Boston. What I can tell you is all the data that we got from that, because our crime analyst is looking at the moment. But numbers wise, we had 1,029 respondents. So that accounts for something like 1 in 69 of the residents of the Borough of Boston. So we've had a really good turnout, if you like, from that point of view. About 20% were from Eastern European nationalities. So again, we had good representation across the board. We had 26 nationalities. So it spanned all the age groups. We aimed it at 16 plus because of the content of the questionnaire. So we've got that. I can't give you any detail, so that's what the results are ultimately. But that's being reviewed at the moment, and that may identify, you know, whether there's concern amongst the elderly people or not, or different parts of the community.
Let me just, Councillor Danny.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Now I have a question for you, Inspector Clarkson. There is one issue which is a lot of residents they're not aware of, is speeding in the town centre. Now, if you come from Bridge Street, you come 20 miles, you go over the bridge 20 miles, and then you get to 30 miles on, and then you go to 20 miles on. Okay, so it's confusing. I raised this point with the county, on the highways, if they have to look at it and they say they're gonna see and look at it and see what they can do. In my opinion, should be 20 mile all the way. Now,
Excuse me, councillor Danny, this isn't really relevant to the report we're talking about.
I'm just talking about speeding.
Yeah.
That's a question. I'm just gonna talk about speeding in the
We can
town
pick it
centre.
up later if you want. Yeah, I'm quite happy to look at it.
It just want to talk about speeding because it's sort of antisocial behaviour. Is it not in the, I
No,
cannot
it's
talk about
not.
speeding.
It's not in this report. We're trying to stick to the questions from this report for tonight, and then you'll have the chance at VTAC.
That's fine.
Thank you. John, I think you've got something to say.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. It was just really in relation to Councillor Point's comments in terms of the difficulties of monitoring and taking key points off away from some of those operations. I think to put it in context, a lot of what we do sometimes quite unquantifiable. And just if you think about the stats we have for CCTV, that shows the absolute of what's happened. What it doesn't show is it doesn't show what didn't happen as a result of the cameras being there. And in our world, that's a really key part of prevention work. But as has just been mentioned, we do have the benefit of receiving the data from the Police and Crime Commissioner's annual survey, which helps both the Safe Links Partnership and also the local community safety partnership shape the priorities that we work on. And I appreciate that does rely on people to come forward and to fill that out, but that's a real key way that we've tapped into trying to identify some of that unquantifiable work, or where we don't have the stats, we don't have the performance data for that, either because it's difficult to capture or because we haven't done a particular operation in that area for a number of years. And that's just the key way of trying to tease that information out from the public, where it's not possibly as apparent as it might be off the back of a national program or operation. So it's not perfect science, we get that, but it's something that hopefully fills the gap or fills some of the gaps in that data that we haven't got readily available to us. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Has anybody got any questions that they'd like to ask Andrew regarding CCTV?
Thank you. I would like just to know if the camera on every street just before the bridge, if it's working and active.
I can't tell you exactly if it is or not, but the last time I was in there, which was about an hour or so ago, it was.
The reason I'm asking is because there's a lot of fly tipping in that area, and we probably need to catch who's doing it. This morning I left at 8:30, was nothing. I came back at 3 o'clock, was a pile of rubbish. So it's daytime. There's no excuse probably to not to know who's doing it. Can we supply this information, see who did it, to our officers who are the environment officers, and then we can deal with it. Thank you.
Yeah, just to mention that camera is mostly focused on that car park area. So it may be that we need to look at potentially trimming some of the foliage around there, because I know we've had difficulties in the past with some of the things that have occurred, not being able to see because of the overgrown foliage. Unfortunately, that's I think it's the railway property that most of that is coming from, so we'll probably able to try a few words to them to see if they can trim some down for us.
Thank you.
Zoe, I think you wanted to come in.
Yes, thank you. It's just in relation to the communication and engagement elements. So it's just to say that at the moment I'm in the process of pulling together a strategy for Safe Lincolnshire Partnership. A draft will go through to Strategy Board in September, and that is in relation to communication and engagement that we will be doing across Lincolnshire. So again, it's a county-wide approach, but within that strategy, what I am looking at, taking into account, I completely agree, everything that's been said. It is very difficult to measure impact of a campaign. However, when we're looking at community engagement, and Safer Lincolnshire Partnership looking to engage with members of the community, making use of networking, then perhaps that is something that we might find a bit easier to evidence. So where have we taken on board the views of the community and fed that into our work streams and our key priority work? So that's something that we are doing. In terms of looking at what communication campaigns that we have ongoing from the county-wide approach, we do have a Twitter account, we do have a Facebook account, so I'm happy to share those details through to you so that you can follow us and also signpost any residents that you're talking to. And what we try to do is have an awareness piece and then signpost to the support and information that is helpful for the residents, so empowering our communities to actually safeguard themselves, safeguard others, and actually be information that's of benefit. So there is work ongoing at a county level, but it is at the very early stages, but I'm happy to provide an update at this committee next year if that is helpful. I can't guarantee what the update will say, but I will provide an update if that would be of benefit to you.
Thank you, Zoe. Councillor Gilbert.
Yeah, I think you mentioned that the community tend not to get engaged in any of these discussions around public safety. I think part of the problem for Boston, I think, is that Boston has a very small and very sort of condensed town centre with large residential areas on the outside, on the outskirts of that, and that has largely been moved away from sort of single family households to many HMOs with a number of occupants. And so I think the perception that people have in Boston is that there are lots of individuals hanging around quite a lot of the time, and they're not perhaps as enthusiastic about saying that for reasons which, might be obvious. You can be accused of being hostile to newly arrived communities if you say something which is seen as controversial. But I think that's from I like Councillor Pierpoint, who represents Stanleyland Ward, and the residents in Stanleyland Ward don't complain about Stanleyland Ward specifically. They complain about what is essentially station ward in the town centre, and it's their perceptions about coming into the town centre that are most concerned to them. A lot of the initiatives are sort of around measurables, interventions, and all that sort of thing. We talked about the difficulties of measuring some of the outcomes, but essentially what we're dealing with here is perceptions, aren't we? I guess if Zoe Walters is mindful to sort of maybe think about making a specific item in her report that relates to how you communicate about perceptions, when or what is behind the perceptions. The fact that if you go into Boston town centre on a Wednesday, there's usually a lot of young men hanging around the Ingram Memorial and all that sort of thing. I'm not suggesting they should be moved on or anything of that sort, but again, looking at the perception that creates probably explains why the public don't particularly want to get involved in some of these initiatives. Maybe feel a little bit uncomfortable about saying what they really feel about the town centre of Boston. Thank you.
So I think, although I can't really tell you much about the survey results at the moment, that just come up in the survey quite significantly, quite a lot in all the hotspots. I guess the pushback from the police is that, we sort of loitering is an issue that it's raised, but it's not antisocial behaviour and it's not crime most of the time. So then we can't really deal with that. Well, I think it opens up the question around, how do you tackle these cultural differences? How do you, educate people? But I think that's where we've got an opportunity when we talk about the environment, change the layout of the environment on these, because you can change perceptions of people. And I'm not saying this is like an easy answer, but if you've got a group of, say, 6 men, standing in a path and you want to walk through them, well, most people would feel a bit off guard or a bit unsettled. But if you had 6 men sat on the bench, I'm not saying that you completely diminish that feeling of unsafeness, but you change the perception. So there are things that can be done, and that's where, again, keep talking about pressure plotting, but we've had environmental surveys done by our crime officer who can look at those types of aspects of look at the layout of the streets and look at the logistics, etc. But again, it's not, it's not police led. That's going to be Borough partners. So it's very difficult, and I think it needs a group of people to look at that cultural side as well, because we don't have that ASB, we don't have that crime related to those groups of people that monitor it.
Councillor Fry.
Thank you, Chair. Residents of Stanham will be happy to know that residents of Brampton and Curtin are also complaining about stations. But this is about CCTV, which you invited questions on earlier on. We've got coming up later on the annual statistical report, a very nice comprehensive report on the information that you've been gathering. But my question is more about the machinery that's out there, and it's how quickly you respond to the need to repair them. The reason I raise it is that some of us in Curtin found out a few months ago that the principal camera in the centre of the village should have caught antisocial behaviour and an alleged assault. Wasn't working and hadn't been working for 3 months. And there was some dispute as to who would pay for the repair, whether it should be the parish council or the borough council. And a number of us were rather concerned that that was quite a long time for the main camera not to be working. So when obviously you're going to have outages, cameras from time to time, how quickly are they repaired? Or are they supposed to be repaired? Here's my question.
Yeah, so we do have a maintenance contract for repairs of all of our cameras in all the regions. In general, the maintenance engineers will come on Wednesday, make any repairs. If it's an emergency, obviously they can squeeze it in earlier, and often if it's just a case of logging in remotely and rebooting, they can do that within a couple of hours usually. So yeah, with usually within a week, there'll be someone that's attended the location to try and see if they can repair it. If not, it'll be whatever they recommend for the repair, and then possibly next week. In terms of Curtin, I don't know, I don't believe we've had any outages of cameras, but I know we've had an outage in terms of our connection to the recorder, which is currently in Curtin. The cameras directly send their images to the recorder, and then we connect to the recorder in the Boston control room by an internet connection. And I think it's been that internet connection in the parish council building that's been a little bit problematic. So we've had to go in and reboot it a few times. Maybe that's something that we need to look at changing and maybe putting a separate connection. I don't know, but whilst that on, the cameras still work and the cameras still record. Just that we cannot look at the images that are there.
The difficulty that was perceived locally is that what's the point of having a camera if you can't use it properly? And the parish council obviously runs the town hall where the recorder is, wasn't told about this. Could perhaps the borough council or the partnership inform the people who are housing equipment which isn't working properly a bit quicker?
Yeah, I mean, all I can say is that when those situations have happened, I've contacted the clerks directly by email, and that's what I've done. I've contacted them and hope that they can quickly sort the problem by potentially rerouting the Wi-Fi router. So yeah, and we have actually attended with engineers when to try and see if there's anything more serious going on. But yeah, mostly it's an issue with the local internet connection, which obviously isn't ours, isn't Boston Borough Council. So yeah, that's all we can do at the moment, unless we look at putting in another connection, and then there'll be a question of who pays for that connection. Yeah.
That's all right.
Just on page, oh, sorry. Just on page 54, the incident category. I noticed there's some quite dramatic changes from 21-22 to 22-23, especially picking up drugs in one of them. I'm just wondering how quickly the Safe Lincolnshire Partnership members react to changes in data. And taking up Councillor point about campaigns. It may be that one year the campaign is in one direction, such as burglary, but actually the word on the street, if you like, is going in a different direction to say drugs. And as we've only got a very limited resource, how quickly can the members react and change focus to make us all feel safer to the actual issue that's happening in the street rather than one that was happening a year ago or 6 months ago. So I'm just interested in the reaction times of changing focus.
Yeah, thanks for the question. And I think it's going in two parts there. That's in terms of the spikes in data. I think you're absolutely right in terms of what we have to be careful is when we run a campaign. That's what we do to try and encourage people to report specific incidents and crime types. It will then obviously make it look like there's a spike in that particular crime. So I think that's where we need to be mindful to correlate those numbers with the operations and where we place emphasis on particular project work. In terms of how quickly we can respond, that really comes back down to when we were talking about the differences between the two partnerships. So, as I mentioned earlier, we have the strategic partnership at the council level, which is where Zoe comes in and with all the colleagues coordinating that, where we absolutely look at what life looks like over the next 3 years from a strategic point of view. It's very difficult to be strategic on a fast responsive basis, but that's where we feel it's absolutely key locally. We have our local community safety partnership so that we can not only look at delivering some of those strategic objectives that are being done across the county, but we can actually adapt and change to any locally occurring themes or emerging priorities that have come through. Over the years, we've done things like theft of bicycles, shop thefts that suddenly spiked in the borough, and campaigns have been worked with the police. I think at one point there was a bicycle that was had a tracker on it that was obviously the view's trying to have that as a target bicycle to go to track. And at a strategic level, we couldn't have done that through the Safe Links Partnership, the best one in the world, because they're looking at things on very much on both the data and perception survey work, how we're going to be trying to commit our resources on a county-wide level, but absolutely at a local level, we will try and pick up on those things. Again, as we tend to find year on year, part of the battle is trying to encourage the reporting of that crime at that local level. And the beat teams then have that ability to work out their priorities, which they we picked up on earlier. There's that process in place, but as we heard, there's a bit of refining going on in terms of how those priorities are going to be brought forward and delivered on, because obviously it looks kind of different from one beat team to the next across the force. So I know probably want to come in on any of that.
So I've not seen this paper before, but I don't think I'm sure people but this is not necessarily representative of what was going on in those incidents. So, for example, you mentioned drugs. That could be that an officer's called and said, "Can you answer this person? We're going to stop searching." And on drugs, drugs tend to be proactive policing. We don't often get that many calls that say, "Oh, someone's dealing drugs." At the second, we get there within a few minutes. It's generally that we're out targeting people or targeting areas. and we only get a result if we search somebody, we only get a positive result. So that could be, I think that's more on the assessment of the CCTV operators as opposed to an indication on crime levels. But talking about crime levels, to give some reassurance around spikes or issues that arise in. We have daily management meetings within the East and we fancy. So you have representation from the various departments that discuss what's happened over the last 24 hours, so any crime or any emerging series of crimes. So you've got urgent dwellings that are coming in, if that's starting to spike, that we discuss at those meetings, as well as the risk and harm. And then we have monthly performance meetings where we actually look at all of these crimes. We don't look at each individual category, we look at it by exception. So if we get an increase in crime out of our what we call our tolerance levels, then that's where we start to look at it, and then we'll put those campaigns in place locally. So it might be that we just have one for Boston, or we might have one for South Holland, or Boston and South Holland. It really depends what's going on. So that those are held monthly, they're shared by the superintendent. We feed into those, we look at the crime data, and we react to those.
Thank you. Councillor Larson. Thank you. I'm sure you're aware that we've got a big issue in the town with people using the town's toilet. What does that come under? Does that come under environmental crime then? Or, yeah. So when, like, I know that there's a lot of women that have said to me that it's happening outside schools. I've witnessed it myself, you know. I know they need to report it. When does that turn into an indecent exposure crime? Please.
So I'm going to go into our legislation and what we call the points of proof for each crime, but essentially urinating in public is either an environmental crime, which the notice for, or a low level public order offence, which we can deal with. It really depends what's going on, but it's critical that people report it to us, because one, and I go on about stats, hopefully in the feedback I'll talk more about it, the stats, but you know, without having those stats, we can't perform our plan, we can't look at the hotspots, etc. Yeah. Then we can't deal with them either. So, you know, if we don't know who's committing offences, it's very difficult to deal with those individuals. So it depends on the context. Indecent exposure is very different to urinating in the street, and there's case law around that as well. So it becomes very technical ultimately. But it depends on the purpose of the exposure.
Yeah.
Does that answer your question?
If I was taking my child to school and there was somebody outside urinating in the street, outside the school, and they turned around and I see everything they've got with my child, I would say that would be indecent.
It depends on the context. I'm not going to get into it.
No, okay, that's fine. I just wanted to know. And also, there is a hotspot which is just across the road here that's used as a toilet regularly. And I don't know, is it under CCTV there or not? Just across the road there, opposite the tattoo parlour.
Yeah.
And also, just to
Have you finished?
Yes, thank you.
just a compliment to Councillor Marston. It's funny, but it's behind the police station when there is the bushes. Usually there is people drinking at the old job centre. That's opposite to your police station. And then they go straight to the bushes there every day. There are women. Last time I catch a woman, I mean, half naked.
So again, councillor Danny, this needs to be more detailed than talking about the report.
Well, I'll just come back just to clarify. So,
Yeah.
so in relation to the tattoo part, you know, we're well aware of that. I think we've done an awful lot of work on it. I've got the stats to hand, but we probably issued about 30 stage 1 advice letters. So in antisocial behaviour of an incremental approach. So we've issued 30 of those or so letters. We've gone through to stage 3. I think we've gone through to one of those, so community protection notice warning. We've arrested and charged 2 people in relation to incidents that occurred there. What we have been made aware of recently is that things have either shifted or a different group of people that causing problems like the B&M, which is the area. So we only became aware of that relatively recently. We've had patrols, daily patrols and joint patrols with the enforcement officers. around 6 to 8 weeks. And I've personally been managing and holding meetings, partnership meetings, where I'm dealing with the West Street or the Rosegarth Street issues. So we have seen that move, and it's something that, you know, we've both been made aware of in the last week or so, and we've reacted to that and adapted our controls to hopefully tackle those issues. We're speaking to the owner of the land as well, who actually, again, you know, an environment issue that it attracts that type of behaviour, and we've not made very much progress with that at the moment. But it's something that we're able to deal with.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Councillor Pierpoint.
Thank you, Chair. I take community safety very seriously, and I'm going to talk about Andrew now about the cameras. You say here the table shows on page 55 the 20 most active cameras in each district. Can you tell me how many cameras Boston's actually got? Point one. I've got about 34 questions in one here for you. So how many cameras has Boston actually got? You've got the top 20 here. What about the rest of them? How many more are they dotted about?
It's fun, I'll tell you exactly.
I'm dead keen to know.
Andrew, can you just put your microphone a bit closer, please? Thank you.
Yeah, so Boston, we have 50 of the movable type cameras and 23 static cameras, so 73 cameras altogether. Okay,
next question then is, are these cameras in the right positions? Because we keep hearing about these black spots on all these areas where things are going wrong and crime are happening. Where's the cameras? Are there cameras in these areas and what I call the black spots?
Yeah, one of the issues obviously we do have is that things move about, and when cameras were first installed to quite a lot of expense to put a column in, etc. That was the place for them at the time. So and we know that things happen in different places. So we do have a group of deployable cameras that we can use, 4G cameras that we, as long as we've got power, we can put up in another place. So that's one of the things we are looking at some of these problem areas is trying to get some of those repositioned so we can look at some of those black spots.
Well, I think it's more urgent than looking and considering. I think talking around the table, there seems to be some areas that really desperately need some cameras. So I think it's urgent in some of the areas. The other question I've got for you is, what's the condition of these cameras? Are they reliable? Are they in good nick? Do they work well? Are they old and clapped out? Tell me what the condition is, because this is security and safety of the public, and I'm very keen that we have the best for everybody in Boston.
The cameras in Boston are out of warranty, so that before the Safe Streets project came along, we were looking at potential upgrade project, which we was asking the council to use some of our reserves to pay for. The Safe Streets project came along, so we put a bunch of upgrades in for Boston cameras to be replaced and improved. So that is obviously in line of being done this year. But yeah, the cameras that we have in Boston are probably getting a little bit tired now, not exactly cutting edge, and we have utilised a lot of spares that we've taken from some other areas, but yeah, they're going to be replaced this year.
All of them, or just some of them?
Pretty much all of them. There are some that we couldn't really class as being as part of that project, but yeah, most of them.
And the last point I want to make, sorry about Madam Chairman, but that's what I want to make is the public don't know we've got cameras. Some don't know how many we've got. Some don't know what they do. I think there's an opportunity here for the council and yourself and anybody else to tell people about what these cameras are actually doing, how safe Boston really is, and what sort of role they play in keeping people safe in the community. We're not doing that. We're not telling people that. And I think if you've got 73 cameras flying around in Boston, it's time we should tell people what they're doing and what impact they have on the community. And we have got a safe community, and that message has got to get across. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Pierpoint. That was well worth saying, I think. John, I think you wanted to come in there.
Yeah, thank you. It's just in relation to the location of the cameras. Just a bit more to what Andrew was saying, wherever we position cameras, we have to be mindful. There's a rationale for it that sits in with the Information Commissioner's guidance as well. Public space CCTV is absolutely all about making the public safe in public space areas. So if we have to be careful not to just directly correlate that to crime statistics, because if you take, say, domestic burglary, you can't put a camera on the corner of every residential street on the basis of trying to catch a burglar that might be anywhere within the town. And I think that's where we have to basically we have to play a very careful game in terms of where we position cameras, so that we don't fall foul of completely blanketing a whole area which doesn't have the evidence to back it up in terms of public space type of crime. The other element that we need to obviously factor in is power supply to the units as well. And whereas years ago all the cameras had to be connected via fibre optic cables and the like to make them talk to each other and get images back. Thankfully, we haven't got those constraints, but we do have constraints about where we can position cameras in terms of power and also line of sight of what it is that we're actually trying to capture. As Andrew mentioned earlier, where we have things like trees or building works or just in existing buildings, it can make the location of a camera very difficult to suddenly spring up and put in place. That said, we are due to monitor the location of the cameras, so we can't just keep cameras up where they've just been forever because it's easy to keep them there. There has to be a rationale for doing that, and do that periodically, again with the Information Commissioner, so as to make sure that we're not falling foul of that.
Jonathan, I appreciate that, and I hear what you say. I understand where you're coming from. Obviously, we're going to make sure we fall in line with all the regulations and positioning and that sort of thing. My point of view as a councillor, I'm interested in safety. I'm interested in community safety. You're the professional, the guy who knows where you can position things and not position things. We're giving you information here today in this meeting about where there's problems and issues. And then it's up to you guys to come up with the answers and find the answers to make sure that those communities are safe. You know, I appreciate all that. And if we've got 73 cameras, in my view, we should maximise those cameras to make sure this town is safe. And that's my message to everybody in this room today. 73 cameras should be maximising that opportunity to make sure everyone in this town is safe. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Councillor Doran. Thank you, Madam Chair. Just to reassure Councillor Pierpoint, like your good self, all our group campaigned on community safety and improving community safety for our residents. You're preaching to the choir here. And this is a backward-looking report. Going forward, I can assure you that I kept community safety in my portfolio quite deliberately, and I have lots of ideas going forward. We are only 12 weeks into a 4-year administration, so we will get there. And just one adjacent point, Madam Chair, on the issue of cameras. I know the officers are willing to accommodate a tour for councillors of the CCTV room. Probably councillors like yourself have already been, but we've got a lot of new councillors who would love to see how the operators work and what they're working with, and we can arrange that at a suitable time. We'll probably offer a couple of dates out. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. And finally, sorry to keep you waiting, Councillor Woodley wanted to ask a question.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, for allowing me.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, thanks very much. Thank you, Madam Chair, for allowing me to speak. I have a question to our officers, actually, not the police. It's about page 57, isn't on the report. This is basically comparison. Let's understand the police data comparison. That's data comparison between the data the police have on crime and our CCTV records. And on page 58, 57, it is 57. That's right. I note that it says. The comparison between police and CCTV data in relation to CCTV logged incidents
the area results in a figure of 5.11%. I understand is about the national figure. But then he goes on to say, as expected, some incident types show greater effectiveness, while criminal damage and arson shows some potential room for improvement. Now, would our officers like to comment on that? What improvements do you have in mind there? Criminal damage and arson shows some potential room for improvement. Look at the figures there, 353 police incidents, I think, and 2 recorded for CCTV. That's 0.5% connection. Now, you've identified that there's some potential room for improvement. Comment.
Yeah, it's the sort of thing that we would expect to be picking up, really, because you expect that sort of thing is happening in public places. So, I mean, and that is an expectation. You know, if you look at it in general, but I think what we need to do is try and dig down a bit further into what those incidents are and see if indeed they are in places that are in a public space or not. So, and you'd expect some of those to be so.
I suspect one might be Woodville Road incident. Would that be recorded here? I'm not sure whether that's the stats of the crowd ship. But that would have been an arson incident. Would that have been recorded on these stats?
I'm not sure if that was on there or not, but obviously the arson in Woodville Roads was captured on CCTV in terms of the people that did it. Maybe we didn't have that great footage of it due to issues that once again of trees overhanging.
Night time.
Sorry?
And night time.
And night time, yes. So yeah, not perfect conditions, but yeah, that's one of the things that we need to keep on top of all the time is a lot of the park areas is making sure that we can actually see the problem areas, but sometimes you have to have a bit of a balance of you know, having a nice environment to be in and want an environment that's suitable for the purposes of CCTV and ultimately where the second in that really.
So what improvements would you suggest that the council does? It's not a police matter, it's a council matter, isn't it? What improvements does the council have to do to improve that particular area? Do you think?
Well, in terms of that one area, I think it would be a case of making sure that trees are trimmed back appropriately, and when equipment is positioned, that will make sure that it's in a place that we can see. Yeah. Sometimes we can move cameras to different locations, sometimes we can't. Because like Woodville Road, for instance, it took us quite some time to get a suitable position that we was allowed to use without using a massive galvanised hole, which would annoy everybody. You know, to find the right equipment to get something there, we haven't had for years. Yeah, it's just unfortunate that we captured it, but the footage maybe not as great as it could be.
So is that a limitation on the cameras, you think?
Yeah, I think this, the camera that's there is good. The footage from it is normally good. I think a whole lot of conditions were wrong for the perfect situation, really.
I do really want to go into a particular incident, which really pick up on the stats doing in this document. So basically what you're saying is improving the equipment will resolve some of these issues. Is that what you're really going with that?
I think once the safer street equipment is in, that will improve things a hell of a lot. Because the restriction we have at the moment is that the camera positions where they are, it is a movable camera and it will look in a direction at a particular time. And whilst it's looking in that direction, it's not looking everywhere else. Now, plans for safer streets are to include cameras where we are covering the whole area all the time. So that will improve things a hell of a lot.
Right, and perhaps better lighting as well.
Well, the newer cameras have improved sensors, so they work in a lot better conditions than
the equipment that's currently there. The equipment we put in 2013, it was good for the time, but yeah, technology always improves, and in terms of the actual sensors in the cameras, they work in a lot lower light conditions than what the other ones do.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We're now to ask the question. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Audley. Are we depleting? Have we had enough on this subject? Councillor Danny.
Just one suggestion. I think if we admit that the technology goes very fast and going forward, have you ever thought about using a drone, which is much cheaper and probably is quicker and it's easier to operate the whole Boston probably in one go?
Well, there are drones deployed by colleagues in the police and emergency planning, etc., for certain situations. The issue we have with drones is there has to be a pilot for every drone, and the pilot has to be within line of sight of it. So we're quite restricted as to what can actually be captured at any one given point. But to be fair, it's a good point in terms of agencies already looking at how that can work for impacts of flooding in the emergency planning incident, say. So as not having officers very close to flood incident areas or any other emergency. So, you know, albeit I know they cost a lot of money, but the drones are a lot more dispensable than an officer. So, you know, certainly for that sort of work, it's out there, it's being used, and who knows, in the next couple of years, it could be something that we're talking about in the CCTV world.
Thank you very much. So we're taking that the content of the report is noted. Are there any areas on this report that you would like to consider to be included in future reports, please? Councillor Welby.
Just really on page 58, it's the training of police volunteers, just to ensure that they are background checks, safeguarding, that they are the correct, shall I say, kind of person that's reviewing the images on behalf of the police. So what training program would be in place for volunteers? Thank you.
Yes, so yes, to point out, it is a police volunteer, so they are vetted to police standards. This particular volunteer we're using at the moment is an ex-employee of ours, so used to work in CCTV. So yeah, at that point they were trained to do the SIA license. But yeah, before they even stepped through the door, they went through the police vetting. So yeah, totally secure.
And you say one, is there more than one? There's one.
There's just one at the moment. We're trying to get everything right in terms of the workflow through to her, and once that's sorted and we know that she becomes overwhelmed, if you like, with work, then we'll look at increasing that. It would be nice to have probably one per area. So once we start looking at review stations in other areas, it would be great for them to be able to work from different locations and also go in to assist officers when they want to review stuff from those review stations. So there's a few different ideas we have for the usage, so it's something we definitely want to expand on.
And then there'd be appropriate training given.
Absolutely, yeah.
The training programme for this would be more than, or several volunteers, wouldn't it? So
yeah, I mean,
you can't always recruit from internally or
yeah.
ex.
Please. Obviously, all police volunteers will go through the appropriate vetting, but from our point of view, we would see them as somebody who's useful for our purpose in assisting our operators, but also as a potential there if we require more staff in the future, as a person that's already used to the location, the equipment, and what we do in the CCTV room, that could potentially go on to be a CCTV operator in that room. So we don't just see them as someone to do a one particular job. We're looking at what they could potentially do in the future.
Thank you.
Sorry, not councillor.
We will join the council.
Another promotion.
Just to reiterate what Andy said, we're trying to get it starts off by slow, that we've opened it up to Boston so far, so for doing the reviews for any case that goes on. I think our initial concerns, and I think we're frustrated with the lack of requests coming through, but we don't want to overwhelm the ones here. You know, we could suddenly end up with 100 requests, let's say, to download and review CCTV. And we've got to get it right, because what we don't want to do is suddenly get all these requests in and officers sat there waiting for these reviews to occur, and the crime just sitting and not progressing. So it's taken a bit of time, and we've got to a point where we've got the work coming through, and I think it just taking it slowly is probably where it's going well. And we're looking at the monitoring side, we'll come back to the hotspots that we've been talking about. And again, we're drawing this apart, but this is for paid stuff. But we're looking at having areas monitored so that we can then issue processes around that. So if someone's outside of school and they're being, and we capture that on CCTV, we'll deal with that afterwards. Whether it's all the enforcement team. So even though we're not there in the hotspots all the time, and we've got a patrol plan for those, we've got an idea that we're working through with CCTV at the moment. So there is sudden presence there, even if we're not physically there, we're still reacting to what we're seeing. So again, it's very early stage, but it looks quite promising.
That's right. Have you got
A quickie. You were asking whether we wanted any more information.
yes?
Obviously, it's an annual report, and we're receiving it 12 weeks into the municipal year. Is the next annual report due in 12 months' time or less than that? And do we get any of this information between now and next year? So are there going to be any updates on this between now and, say, next May?
Yeah, thank you. So in terms of the report, yes, you receive another one next year. Obviously, we need to wait for the year to finish in order to collect the information to produce the report. But we do obviously provide information through portfolio process as the portfolio holder Councillor Dorian on a regular basis in terms of anything food safety related.
Have we got anybody else that wants to do anything else, or focus on anything else in this dispute going ahead or moving forward, or are you happy with what's coming out of it? I found this so interesting, and I think it's so relevant and obviously very sensitive, because we know people have concerns around the town, we know things are happening around the town. It's certainly something that we can all work on. So thank you so much, officers and Inspector Clarkson, for coming on tonight. I know you were a busy chap. So thank you for all the work that you've done on this, and Councillor Dorian for leading it. Found it very interesting. Thank you. I think Zoe just wants to come in here. Oh, she wants to go.
No.
Legs across.
It's fine, Zoe. Thank you very much.
No, that's not what I meant, but thank you.
If you wish to leave, I understand that you've got other things to do, perhaps.
Thank you. Thank you
for coming and enjoying your company. It's been very interesting.
Yeah.
Well done. All of you, all the officers, don't you think? You got promoted to councillor. Before you turned up.
So, our fourth report today is the quarter performance, which is on page 73. Again, remember that this is last year's information. The portfolio holder, Dorian, will present this report, supported by Insights and Transformation Manager, Suzanne Roth. Thank you. My report is really denoting. Sorry,
I cut you off there, Madam Chair. My apologies. Thanks to Suzanne for compiling this report. She's our data queen, and I love what she does. This again is a backward-looking report, so it's really for noting for you to identify any particular KPIs that didn't hit target that you went that you're upset about, or you want to know more detail about. To be fair, Suzanne has provided a good narrative, Madam Chair, as to when a KPI is in the red and targets weren't met. And I think they're all very much self-explanatory. However, this is a report for you, councillors, to ask questions on. I would just encourage you to fire away with anything you're not sure of. Obviously, if you look at the appendices, the topics there are very clearly marked, and the KPIs in red are the ones that certainly my eye are drawn to. But then when you dig into the narrative, you can usually find there is a reasonable and acceptable explanation, and take comfort in the knowledge that your officers are always dealing with them. So I'll just leave it there, Madam Chair. It's backward looking. Take any questions.
Thank you. I think a couple of things that I noted from this was on page 78, and it was the market stall occupancy rate. Waterfall, it had dropped quite a lot. I wondered what kind of stalls were leaving the market, and I wondered if perhaps stalls such as fresh produce, vegetable stalls were struggling to compete against supermarkets.
Around the market occupancy, usually in Q4, because that's January to March, it's impacted by the weather. So it may be that's the impact, but that might be an area that the committee would like some more information on.
I can also add to that the portfolio holder, Councillor Broughton, is very active in looking at how to improve the market offer, and is extremely enthusiastic in getting new and additional market stallholders to Boston Market. You know, I don't know how often you hear it, Madam Chair, but I hear a lot. Oh, Boston Market will never be the same. Well, we're going to give it a very good go at bringing back that vibrancy and that identity that Boston used to have. Thank you, Madam.
Thank you, Councillor Dorian. And the other point that I picked up on was again on page 78. Disappointed that members of the workforce felt that they were not informed about the partnership and decisions it makes. You know, that to me that was quite disappointing, and they need to know more of what's going on, really.
So there was an increase in Q4. There has been some work that's gone on in between each of the quarters to look at some of this information and to understand underneath what's going on. So there's one-to-one meetings that are held between managers and staff, so that these are high-level indicators. We need to understand underneath that, why don't they feel informed, and in what ways we can help that. And there's a further staff survey that we're working on that will have more in-depth questions, so that we can dig a bit more into these. These tend to be just 4 questions that are asked every quarter, so that we can get a trend, but we do need to know more to impact on that. But yes, I think Q4 was a good improvement, and so we'll see what comes.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I think that what I would add to what Suzanne says is that change management is very, very difficult in our organisation, and obviously in the last 2 years this organisation has undergone substantial change, and not only us as councillors are working differently, but our staff are working very differently, and that's very, very difficult to manage as a senior officer. It's important that we face the reality that people are unhappy. There's no doubt about that, because we need to get to the nub of it. And it's also something that the peer review picked up, Madam Chair. So I know that senior officers are looking at it, and we do want to make that bigger, better than it is now.
I think it's your turn, Councillor Pearboy.
Are you sure? I'll be very brief. Suzanne, just going on to page 81. I know it's the red mark against the car parking income. I can see what the explanation. First of all, there's no quarter there, numbers. Are people being very overzealous in their budgeting when they're doing the car parking income? I mean, I know we've got Christmas, I know we've got other things here, but at the end of the day, you know, budgeting is something that you should be there's a flow now, year in, year out, in this council of car parking monies and fees and things like that. So that should be really quite accurate, how I thought, the budgeting, because you've got the last 4 or 5 years' incomes from the last 4 or 5 years to review. So to me, that's not a sensible sort of thing to look at, to be honest.
We do have some consistency, but following COVID-19 and lockdown, there were a lot of changes in car parking and the change of use of car parking. I think we're starting to see the end of that now. And I would hope that the budget for this current financial year will be much more accurate. But I think even last year there were changes in some free car parking was given. There was quite a lot of change that we really ought to have fed into the performance up front, rather than at the end of the year saying we didn't hit our target. Well, actually, if we changed the approach, we should have changed our target, and we'll be in a better position to do that this year.
Yeah, because if you budget things, you can always adjust your budgets according to how the flow of things are going. Why wasn't there no numbers available for Q2?
I think that's around the reporting again, but I can check if we've got those numbers now, but we're trying to pull together that understanding. Yeah, we didn't have Q2 at the time.
Thank you. I will say this is quite an interesting report, and we're on target on most things except the little red thing, which I can understand, but I have to say it's quite pleasing to read. Thank you.
That's what I mean.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Just coming back to the parkings, I think the most important thing, we had an issue with our parking attendants. We didn't have any certain times. That was one of the main issues. Christmas, I think 3 days free parking will not affect our income, because I think our income was almost 1 million a year. So it dropped dramatically, after COVID. But as I say, we didn't have enough parking attendants for quite a long time. And as I stated last time in one of the meetings, that now I think Boston has hired 2 parking attendants, and probably the income will increase. And the reasons why, again, we didn't have any, the income wasn't probably adequate with what we're supposed to have, is that like Tony Street was free almost for a few months. The machines weren't working, the people couldn't pay by card, people couldn't pay by money. And again, the reason comes to the parking attendant. Our parking attendant is supposed to change the rule, which is the paper inside the machine, which is they didn't, and the collection of the money wasn't done. So both of them has, contributed to the lack of people paying. So the parking was, I would say probably for a year, they were for free. Nobody was attending. And the person who was doing it part-time used to be probably once a month for 2 hours, and then he disappeared. So we didn't have that kind of push, which is we tried with Andy Fisher to have more parking attendant last year. However, they didn't hire, but now we can see 2, and hopefully the income will probably increase. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. To reassure Councillor Danny, everything he mentioned, if true, happened in the last administration. And we are now looking at buying new parking machines, as annotated here, which will allow members of the public to pay by cash or by card. And there'll be those machines where you have to insert your number plate, so that dispels the opportunity to share tickets the way you might do if you've just bought a ticket without a number plate and give it to the next driver coming along. So this is income that we rely on as a council. That one of the reasons why, when the public lament, as they often do, well, why can't we have free parking? Well, it's because at the moment our budgets rely on it heavily. I take Councillor Pierpoint's issue around the accuracy of the figures. I've asked for some data recently, Councillor Pierpoint, and was a little bit disappointed that it was somewhat inflated, and it's been adjusted as we speak. So going forward, hopefully things will be much improved. Thank you, Madam Chair.
That's the right.
One general question, Chairman, and some specific ones as well. Does scrutiny in Boston get comparison data with similar authorities? So is Boston compared to other authorities, and when can we expect that information?
Thank you. We do some benchmarking, but we do find that we need to find really comparable authorities to be able to make it useful. Otherwise, we tend to argue about why we're not the same, rather than deal with the actual performance.
So it doesn't government tell you that?
There's not usually. similar indicators across the whole of government. We used to have those best value performance indicators, but we don't have them anymore. And so they tend to be recorded differently in different areas. So what we do is find comparative authorities and look at specific services so that we can actually get underneath the process that we're looking at. So as part of service reviews, we might look at waste collection across Lincolnshire or across the region and do more targeted benchmarking at that level. It isn't always helpful to look at, say, the waste figures across the whole of the country because we do things so differently. So we do some benchmarking, and if there are areas of interest that you'd like to put on the work programme, we can definitely pull some research together for you on areas of interest for scrutiny, so it's specific rather than too general and not useful.
The two councils I've heard we compare ourselves with are Melton and Newark. And we're not similar enough to any of the other Lincolnshire councils to compare validly. I thought government told us, and all councils, you're in that group, compare yourselves with them, based on population and the arrangement of towns and villages in the rural districts.
Yes, there is a family group that sits with us, which is based on that kind of thing, population, rural aspect, those kind of areas. But it depends what the measure is that you're looking at. So something, say markets that we were talking about, you'd have to find similar areas with that kind of setup to be able to do some sensible benchmarking. Yeah, we do have that family group. I don't find it particularly helpful on most of our indicators because we are so different. So it's finding out other services that are very similar to us, or populations or residents that are similar. And then South Holland used to be the area we benchmark mostly with. Of course, as part of the partnership, we can do even more of that, but they're very similar.
Okay, well, thank you. The more specific question is, I'm wondering whether this scrutiny committee gets information on more detailed environmental information. For example, air pollution, water pollution, whether the bins are being emptied properly, how many of the bins are contaminated and rejected, and what we do when they're rejected. As far as I know, we just go around a bit later and pick them up anyway. Whether the litter bins in town and in the villages are adequate and emptied or not. Public toilets being dealt with, I think, by BTAC in any case. But whether the road closures happen a hell of a lot, disruption to residents and businesses because of that, especially when utilities seem to want roads to be closed for months on end. It's severely affecting Boston and the villages around Boston.
That's the point. I mean, road closures are LCC, aren't they? So they're not going to come to scrutiny.
Okay, for example, there are many things that we do as a council. I'm wondering whether those services are reported back to this committee or to full council.
I mean, I'll come in a minute, but if there are things that you want to scrutinise, then we can put it on the work programme.
Yeah.
Councillor Dorian.
Exactly that, Madam Chair. If this council delivers a service, you can scrutinise it to your heart's content, Councillor Pike, and I would encourage you to do so. Similarly, if we work with partner organisations, we can invite them around the table, just like we do with Lincolnshire Police, with LHP and the like. You can invite those bodies around the table and you can scrutinise their work in terms of how they deliver for our residents. So Madam Chair is absolutely right. If we deliver it, you can scrutinise it. All you have to do is put it on your work programme.
Thank you.
Any further questions?
Just one quick one as well. I was sitting here musing, looking at these figures. It's an interesting figure relating to collection of council tax collection rate. I'm just wondering, is there any evidence to suggest that the changing nature of the housing market in the town is in any way influencing the reduced collection rate, given that we've got a number of HMOs and a reduction in the number of households occupied by one family? Or is it all linked to not establishing business as usual following COVID and the current cost of living crisis?
I don't know the answer to that off the top of my head, but I will go back to the service and ask for some more information.
Are we happy with the report? No further questions? Thank you very much, Councillor Lauren and Suzanne, for the report. Very interesting. Thank you. Finally this evening, we have our work programme on page 83, and Mr. Allen will talk us through this. You've been very quiet, Mr. Allen.
The previous item brings us quite neatly into this item, doesn't it? Because we have, as a matter of routine, we have a work programme that we presented at every meeting of the committee. And as you can see before you, we have just 2 papers on the programme for September's meeting. One's review of waste collection rounds, and interestingly, a topic that's come up today, an update on a market review. We've also been referred a topic from the sister scrutiny committee, which is a corporate communities committee, on a change to car parking policy that they would like us to take on as part of our work programme. So that we need to, if you're agreeable, we need to slot that into the agenda at some point in our programme. That's probably what I would say. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Can I ask a question, please, on that? Because obviously we've all had notification that perhaps car parking would be changed on the 4th of September. If we're now asking to scrutinise it, does that mean that will not go ahead until it's been scrutinised?
I'm not sure on the background of why that topic has been referred through here, or why the topic's been raised at all. I don't know, Karen, whether you've got anything you can add from your work across both committees.
It came very late at corporate community at the end of the work programme. And I do need to go back to Andy. I've not had a chance to speak to Andy about it yet. It sort of came in as people were leaving. Can we have a look at this? Can it go to EMP? So I will get back. It was only last week on Thursday. I've not had a chance to type down yet. So I'm sorry about that, but I will get it back. Okay.
I think it came in on the back of, we all received a letter to say that there'd be no allocated spaces for councillors in the building car parking spaces. So there was a lot of disquiet from councillors that this was happening and it hadn't been scrutinised. We were just being told it was happening. So that is why they have asked for it to go to a scrutiny committee.
The consultation, otherwise, Madam Chairman.
This is what we're going to do. So this is why we're asking for it to be. That's why I've said, does that mean that it will not happen on September the 4th until it is scrutinised?
That I can't answer. I think what I can do is I'll go away and talk to my opposite number anti-pushery chairs to CNC and just get a bit more background on that. Probably share it with you outside of the meeting. At the end of the day, it's your decision as a scrutiny committee what you decide to have on your work programme. You can accept this particular task or not. It's really entirely up to you.
Well, no, I think councillors are saying that they're quite concerned that it hasn't been scrutinised. We're just being told it's going to happen. So to me, it wants to go on a work programme sooner rather than later, possibly the 5th of September.
I agree.
I agree, yeah.
I agree.
Okay.
Okay, then leave that with me. I'll speak to my colleague and we'll bring this up forward.
Sorry,
That's it, Andy.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I was going to bring the same point because I think it's, as a councillor, I think our privilege will be taken slowly without, discussing it. And I think we should scrutinise the decision. But I mean, we have how many days we have for ourselves? Probably 8 or 10 by the wall. That's all we have. And I mean, if we come up to 6 o'clock, we may park anywhere. So as I said, our privilege is gone. I mean, we are councillors after all, and we need that parking spaces. And we need to scrutinise it because it affects us 30 councillors. However, if the decision will be just going through and then goes to the cabinet and the cabinet will agree with it, I think we should think about it. All of us is 30 councillors. It's not just us here. Thank you.
I think perhaps enough said on the conversation. If we're going to scrutinise it, but it was made comment that we weren't utilising them enough. My concern just was that we've got an awful lot of councillors that work full time and possibly sometimes pop in this building at lunchtime for a quick meeting between other appointments in their diary. And it just raised a little bit of a concern with me. But thank you, Councillor Danny.
It's just our privileges taken from us, and that's how we see it, because what have we got? Our allowances is not as good as anybody else around the area, and then we have few bays, and they're going to be taken from us.
I don't think it's a privilege, I think it's a necessity.
So let's get it on the work programme for September, please.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yes, again, Chris said it's going to be implemented on September the 4th. So what we need you to do is go away and talk to Andy. It may be that we need to scrutinise it before that date.
Yeah.
So what's going to be implemented on the 4th? The potential changes to car parking. And
we will lose our slots in the municipal buildings. Thank you. I don't think it was going anywhere. I think it was this is what is happening. And on. Is there anything else? Anything else that you'd like on the work programme? That's the builder.
Yeah, just a point of clarification really. I've been approached by somebody from the Boston Athletics Club about the facilities that they have made available to them at the PRSA, which they're saying are significantly depleted, probably 10 years in need of a refurb. And they're not making any progress dealing with the management of the PRSA. And I just wonder whether scrutinising that falls into corporate and communities, or whether it falls under this one, or indeed does it fall under any of them? I mean, I'm sure it falls under one of them, because it's our responsibility as an authority to manage the contracts with that with the PRSA. But they're very unhappy about the state of the facilities that are available to them, and they say that they're in danger of losing athletics in not only Boston. If Boston lose athletics, Lincolnshire lose athletics.
Even though, Chris, this is less at PRSA, do we have some involvement in it?
Yeah, as you heard Councillor Dorian say, if it's a service that we provide, whether it's a building that we lease to another user, we have responsibilities as a building owner towards that facility. So yes, it's something that we can scrutinise. I'd have to take advice on whether it's this committee or CNC, but it feels like it's probably this committee if it's leisure, but I don't know. Oh, Karen's got a view.
What was Karen? We must be Karen's being on. One more thing I would like to know more about is Jeff Mulder. Apparently, there is a rumour that's for tender. So if we can get any information on that, because anything we own, we control and we provide the services. So I would like to know what's going on with Jeff Mulder at the moment, and that's I think
perhaps that's the question you need to have ask the leader. Thank you.
Yeah, it's our facility. So
what a great meeting.
Yeah, I mean, that does come up within the levelling up programme. But again, what I will say at the moment is have a conversation with the leader. Okay. Any other items that you'd like, Councillor Bright?
2 items for the work programme, please. One, air pollution. What does Boston know about it, and what can Boston do about it, particularly in relation to traffic near primary schools, traffic, particularly diesel traffic on the bigger roads, so Sleaford Road, Queen Street, the road next to Asda, John Adams Way, London Road, Norfolk Street, Tawney Street. When the traffic is stalled by lights or congestion, pollution mounts very, very rapidly. We'd like Boston to be able to do something about it, but I don't know whether we can. One.
I think that this has already been investigated, am I not right? And is it within, has that not been investigated in the past? Sorry.
We have a statutory duty as a local authority to monitor air quality of certain health-based pollutants. It might be helpful to take this as a suggestion if you want to know more about air pollution and the responsibilities of the council, what we do as an environmental health service, how we work with our partners, including the county, then it might be worth a sort of a one-to-one session initially with perhaps my environmental health team that can share with you what they do statutorily and how they manage it. If after that you feel it's a topic that you want to scrutinise still further, then absolutely we can bring it back as a topic.
Can I suggest or request a briefing paper, 2 or 3 sides at most, to be circulated to all of us, and then we can consider at our next meeting whether we want to do anything else on it.
I think it is monitored, isn't it? I think there are facts and figures there already from county.
There are indeed. We do monitor it. We do submit a report to DEFRA, to government every year, and the most recent report actually was going through cabinet the previous administration, where we've got 2 air quality management areas, and one of them was rescinded because the air quality for nitrogen dioxide had improved, so that it was better than the threshold.
So we don't monitor in one location?
No, we monitor a number of locations, a number of different pollutants across the district. I think probably the suggestion that's been made that we provide a briefing paper to you or to members of the committee, either at the next meeting or outside of this meeting, I don't mind, and you can take a decision then about whether you want to scrutinise.
In the next few weeks, say before our next meeting.
Yeah,
would be helpful.
Okay. Yeah.
But my second request for the work programme is about the domestic bins and contamination and what we do about it, and particularly education about contents of bins and potential new recycling opportunities. I guess the county determine that because they need the contract to, I don't know, recycle, I don't know, polystyrene. We can't do that on our own. But there are things that go into bins which shouldn't go into bins. I'm not sure that the little A5 leaflet that comes out with the rates bill is enough education for people.
I think however much you educated them, they would still put the wrong stuff in bins because some of them don't care.
Yes, I think, again, clearly there's lots of new members around the table, and we have sort of established processes and partnerships in place, and an established strategy that that we're working on as a district council with our partners. And there's some of that strategy we can influence locally, some of it is set by government. So I think if you want to understand a little bit more about aspects of waste, then I think probably a briefing for committee members might be the first step. And then
I don't want, sorry, I don't want a list of what you can recycle and what you can't. I want to know what can Boston do to help the people of the area do it better.
Yeah, yes, and to do that, you need to understand the context, because we don't operate in isolation as a waste collection authority. We operate as a partnership with the county council, the environment agency, and the other districts to manage household waste within Lincolnshire. So there are things we can do, and there are things that we can't do, and obviously it depends a lot on the resources we have available. So I think it's probably better through a briefing initially, and then we can take it from there to decide whether there's other elements, there's specific elements that you want to scrutinise in more detail.
Are you suggesting a committee briefing or a member briefing?
I don't know. Member. Yeah, member. Yeah, I think it's a topic that's.
I mean, I think all of us keep our eyes and ears to the ground, and you see what some people do, and unless it's reported, they continue to do it. And as councillors, perhaps, you know, we should keep our eyes to the ground and make sure people aren't putting brown bins out when they haven't paid for them, etc., etc. You know, I get what you're saying, Councillor Bright, but I'm not sure where we're actually going with it. But let's have a members' briefing, and then everybody is aware how it works. And then if there's something there that you're not happy with, pick up on it and bring it back to scrutiny.
The reason I raised it is because, yes, I would like better education about it. I don't know how much you've tried in the past apart from the A5 leaflets in the annual mailing. Does education work? If you do an intensive campaign in, I don't know, the Parthian estate in Wimbledon, has it had any good results? You have a pilot area, for example. I don't know if you've ever done that before. I'm not necessarily suggesting it, but I do think that better education would improve the situation all round. And if we can assist with that, I'd like us to be able to do that.
Do you want to come in on that?
Yes, I just want to come on the comment from Councillor Bright. I tell you what we did in Fenside. Okay, we had a day for all the residents of Fenside to come and have a look and see what we do. We had 2 officers there from 8 o'clock to 8 o'clock in the evening. You know how many people attended that place, Fenside Community Centre? 4 people. And it was advertised on the website of the Boston Borough Council. It was with the bins, it was everywhere. So anybody can come and can learn how to do things, but people, they won't bother. And I think it's not here on the side of the council, but you try a lot of things. However, I have been called to a bin which was contaminated, and the person was complaining, saying that the bin already didn't want to collect it, blah, 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 blah. When we checked, we found a bag of McDonald's inside, and they say it's contaminated boxes and paper. Oh, I didn't see that. Oh, I didn't know that. It does happen. I think us as councillors, if we can tackle it person to person, I think it can work. But as I told you, I can assure you that the council we did in Fenside, 4 people attended for 12 hours. Well, that's true. That's fact.
Councillor Marston.
Mine's off that subject altogether. Mine's just to back up what Councillor Gilbert said about the PR estate, just on a positive note. I worked there for 18 months with the vaccine programme, and I got to know a lot of the athletes there, and they do actually come from all over Lincolnshire, and they do actually say it's the best athletics track in Lincolnshire. So I think we've got a gem there, and the track is very warm. I think we've got a gem, and we should really look after that.
Which Chris is going to look into. He's going to look at that. Thank you. And Councillor Gilbert.
Yeah, actually picking up Councillor Price's point, I think, you know, bins are, for me, an issue that's kind of ground my gears for probably nearly a decade. In particular, bins parked on streets where they get generally contaminated by passers-by. I guess that's where McDonald's contamination comes from. So I think there are huge issues to do with the amenity of the town, the appearance of the town, doing something to try and get these bins off streets, back into people's backyards, reopening the alleyways at the back of people's houses, maybe finding some funding from the levelling up funds that are available to enable us to do something like that, because it does affect the appearance of Boston. And we've got a big event coming up, the Mayflower 400, in a few years' time. I mean, the last thing people want to observe when we set up this railway station is that stream of different coloured bins. If they look up towards the police station, it's going to look dreadful. But in addition to that, and extending the issue a little, I think we need to talk to landlords, landlord agents. I think they have a lot of responsibility here. I think the fact that Boston has so much churn in its local town centre population is a problem. I mean, in the last 12 months, 3 or 4 families have lived in the house opposite me, and those households have consisted of different people at different times. I go across as the nosy neighbour, you know, Michael Cain, nosy neighbour, and I tell them, you know, you can't put that in there, sort of thing, you know, you've got to put this in there. It definitely needs somebody to take a little bit of an initiative in the local community. So it's education, but it's face-to-face education, because Councillor Dan's absolutely right. You lay on something like that, an event of that sort, and nobody bothers to turn up. And I've seen those events occur numerous times, and they are very, very underwhelmingly attended. But maybe finding a way of reaching out to the local community, a bit like a neighbourhood watch arrangement, if you like, where someone takes the lead in the local community, is sort of a bin champion or something, and just knocks on doors and explains how it all works. That might be something we could pilot in Boston.
I agree with you on that. Sorry, Chair, say something. I wasn't suggesting an event, so that's an Aunt Sally. I was requesting scrutiny of what Boston can do to improve the rubbish collection.
And again on that, it's like you said, bins. We've now got 3 bins, haven't we? And some people haven't got room to put 3 bins. When the purple bin arrived on my doorstep, I thought, oh, not another bin. But I thought, I'm going to use it. I do use it, put my cardboard in it. And if you don't use all 3 bins, then by the end of the week, your bins are full, aren't they? So there are a lot of bins. I'm not quite sure how we're going to educate Joe public any better than what we are into using a bin. But we will look at a briefing. Chris?
Yeah, I mean, I'm listening with interest to what members are saying, and you know, there are people, there are officers within the council that have dedicated their careers, dedicate their working lives to educating the public about waste and recycling. and team, you know, partners we work with as well. But it's a constant, you know, it's a constant task, if you like, to you know, with a changing population, with people moving in and out of the area, because we don't have consistent waste collections between districts, let alone regionally across the county at the moment. So yeah, it's a constant battle. So I think it would be good to bring the people to the committee who are involved actually in delivery of that particular service on behalf of the council, and work with our partners so that they can explain to you what they do, and listen to where there are probably areas you have ideas for improvement.
Yeah, I can understand that. I mean, I think that there's money is going to be required, because I think if you look at something like Station Street or James Street, there was a time when you had 1 bin and it went back to the back of the house after every bin collection. Now you have 3 bins, and those bins stay on the street. So something's changed in the last 15 years or so. I think people have blocked the alleyways at the back because of anxiety about insecurity or something, or lack of security. Now, what we need to do is perhaps look at some of the money we're getting, invest it in assisting those people to put that security there, so they can once again start to use